Hello everyone, and welcome to my tutorial on the custom book protector. This pattern can be made with all kinds of different materials for the exterior, such as cottons, canvas, vinyl, leather, or cork. And for the lining, you can use cottons, canvas, or anything similar. Since it's a custom pattern, you'll be making the cover based on whatever book you want to protect, and I will be walking you through each step. The cover I'm making today is in waterproof canvas exterior and lining with the optional handles and security strap. So the inside and the exterior and the lining are all done in waterproof canvas on this one. I did use a different color, but still waterproof canvas. And here's another one done with the vinyl on the exterior and waterproof canvas for the lining. And the handles are done in a two-tone strap with the vinyl on the exterior, but on the inside is a waterproof canvas. And that was done to keep the layers down so it's not so thick in through here. And I'll also be covering how to do that. For this video, I'll be doing the measurements in imperial measure or inches, but the pattern does include calculations for metric as well. So let's get going. All right, let's go to page 2 and just go over some of the supplies that are needed. But first, I want to point out that all seams will be 1/4 inch unless otherwise noted. Now for your supplies needed, of course you need an exterior fabric and a lining, or in the case that I did with the waterproof canvas, I could have picked all the same for all pieces that I was cutting out, but I just chose to do the main panel of the lining in an alternate color. But whichever you choose, if you want the exterior all in one and all the lining in another, that's going to be totally up to you. And if you're using any cotton type fabrics, you will need interfacing enough for the main panels. You do not need it for the sleeves, and you need it for the handles and the security strap if you choose to put those on. And then, of course, your fabric scissors. You'll need some paper scissors as well to cut your little piece of cardboard. And that's a serial type cardboard, so it's thin but it's sturdy, just to create a little pattern piece. And your measure tape and a ruler is also helpful. And some kind of erasable pen, pencil, marking tool. Most of it, your marks will be on the back side of the fabric, but some will be on the right side. And of course some thread. I'm choosing with what I'm working on. I'll be using a normal garment thread, a normal weight. I believe this is a 40 weight. So garment thread for construction. And for the top stitching, because I'm using a little thicker material, I'm using a bonded nylon. You could also use denim thread, which makes some beautiful top stitching. It's thicker, it looks really good. And quilting clips or pins to hold your pieces together for sewing, or you can use a double-sided tape, which I use lots of double-sided tape. And for the closure, you'll need the 4-part snap, which is of course the top and the bottom part of the top, and the 2-part for this one, so that's a 4-part snap, or the hook and loop tape to close it off. And you will also need a little piece of Peltex or Decoville Heavy to put in here to reinforce the snap area. Okay, let's talk about the interfacing. So the interfacing, you would cut your piece the same size as the main panel, exterior, and lining, and cut out the seam allowance. So your seam allowance is 1/4 inch, so you trim 1/4 inch all the way around. And for the main panel lining sleeves, you do not interface these at all. They're not needed. For your handles, you fully interface them, and the security strap, you fully interface it. So you've got the main panel exterior, which is this. You've got the main panel lining, which is identical in size to the main panel exterior. And then you've got the 2 sleeves, the left and the right. That's that's your 4 main pieces for the pattern. So if you don't want to put handles or the security strap, that's the only 4 pieces you need to concern yourself with. But then we also have the handles and security strap if you want them. So right now I've got some numbers put in there, and we're going to go over that and show you how to do it. This is going to be your cheat sheet. Once you've done the first few pages of calculations, which will only take a couple minutes, this will be what you can take to your cutting table, and that's all you're going to need. So it's really, really quick. All right, so let's go over the dimensions of the book. How do you get there? All right, so we've got at the top here, we've got a book wrap, and I've gone ahead and given some abbreviations to each of these, because when we get to the formulas, there's just not enough room to write them all out, and it gets hard to see what's going on. So I've just given some abbreviations there. So the book wrap, you take your measure tape and go from the top of one side of the book all the way around the binding to the other side, and mine is 11 3/8. So you just go ahead and write that in. And the next one, a book height, right here, is how tall is the book? Well, mine says 7.5 inches. So I write in 7.5 inches. And the book width is this here, 5 1/4. And the book thickness is the thickness of the binding here, which is 3/4 of an inch. And then the cover thickness, and you may or may not need that. With this book, it's just a thin cardboard. There's really no thickness there. So for me, I won't be needing it. And as you notice here, it says if applicable, and there's an asterisk. And at the bottom here, it says this parenthetical section of the formula, which here we've got it 2 times the cover thickness with the little asterisk. It's only needed for thick covers. Its value will be 0 for thin book covers and can be omitted. So here's an example of a book that you would need that value. So if you look at the book cover, it's actually 1/8 of an inch wide, and that you've got to take into account because that adds up. So for some that might have a hard time with the fractions, 1/8 of an inch, in the formula you need to go 2 times 1/8 of an inch. So 2 times 1/8 of an inch is 1/4. And that's typically the thickness of thicker books. You might get a little thicker than that, but that's pretty typical. All right, so let's just do these quick formulas. We've only got 2 pages of any kind of math work, so don't get intimidated. Okay, so we've got the main panel width that we want to figure out this way. So the main panel width is the book wrap, which we've written here, 11 3/8, plus an inch, plus 2 times the cover thickness. I don't need that. I won't need it in the next one either, so I'm going to cross them out. So I only need the book wrap plus an inch. So the book wrap is 11 3/8, write it in, plus an inch. That's the metric, is the 25 millimeters is for metric, so you don't worry about that if you're not doing the metric. 11 3/8 plus an inch, and plus this part, which I don't need. So 11 3/8 plus an inch is 12 3/8. So if you go ahead and you cross out, like if you don't need the cover thickness, go ahead and cross it out right to start where you don't need it in your formulas, and you'll find that, oh, okay, it makes it easier. 11 3/8 plus an inch, 12 3/8. Now for the main panel height, I want the book height plus an inch and plus 2 times the cover thickness, which I don't need. So the book height is 7.5 plus 1 inch, so 8.5. And then I've gone ahead and written them in here, the 12 3/8 for the width and 8.5. Those are the 2 main pieces. So I've already got those figured out, all done. And then you cut 1 rectangle each for the main panel exterior and 1 for the lining. Okay, so let's go over how to determine the sleeves. So the sleeve height is the same as the main panel. So the main panel was 8.5 inches, so I went ahead and wrote here the sleeve height is 8.5. But to figure out the width of the sleeve, we start with the book width. So let's go back to our little page, which is 5 1/4. It's the book width. We divide it by 2, then you add 2. So you got the book width divided by 2 plus 2 inches. Book width is 5 1/4. You divide it by 2 inches, and then you'd add the 2. 5 1/4 divided by 2 is 2 5/8, plus 2 inches is 4 5/8. So that's it. And then you go ahead and you write it in here. So your width of your sleeves will be 4 5/8, and the height is 8.5. That is the biggest part of the calculation. We are all done the hard part. Okay, let's do the little pattern piece that we're going to need, because as you see this one, it's showing curves. Some books have curves, some are, the corners are sharp, but if your book has a curve to it like this one does, okay, you can see that it's got a curve. We need to create a pattern piece. So how do you create that pattern piece? Okay, I'm just going to lay him aside. Let's have a look at the pieces here, at your diagrams. All right, so what it says to do, I've kind of used him a few times. It says to draw, on a cardboard piece, draw 2 lines 1/2 inch away from the edge, one like this, one like this. So you've got these 2 lines, and then you lay your book corner, curve, however you want to look at it, against those 2 lines, and then you trace it. Just take your marker pen and trace that edge. So there is the representation of the corner of your book. Now from there, this picture, it shows these little arrows going towards another curve right here. And that's going to be the edge of the pattern piece, and we'll trim that and create a pattern piece. So how you do that, take your ruler, and this is where it kind of starts to curve. So I go a little higher, I kind of angle my ruler a bit and put a mark. And I keep doing this around the curve until I get to where the curve stops, up there like that. And now just go ahead and connect the dots, as it were, and you have created the curve for your pattern piece, which I've done over here, and I've already trimmed it. So this is, and I've actually, because I'm doing multiple books at the time, I'm going to write right on there which one this is for. And again, if you have a book that has sharp corners, like this one, it's straight corners here, you do not need to do a pattern piece. You'll be just cutting straight rectangles. All right, let's look at the handles. Now, starting at a cut length of 12 inches, you'll have enough to play around with in the attaching handles to the main panel stage. To determine the handle's cut width, here's the quick reference chart below, but the formula is here as well for sizes not listed. Pick the finished width you'd like, so let's look at that, and then find the cut width that you're going to need. So these handles are 3/4 of an inch wide. So I just have to look at the chart and find the finished width of 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to be cutting my handles 3 inches wide. And I've put them in increments of 1/4 of an inch up to 1 1/4 inch. That's a fairly wide strap. So if you need sizes that are not written here, then you would just take the handle finished width and you times it by 4. So I'm going to be using a 3/4 inch strap, a finished strap width strap. So I want to cut it at 3 inches. So I go ahead and on my chart here, I'm going to write the length of 12 inches. So far, these are both 12 inches and I like what they are, so I'm going to keep it at that for the book that I'm using. I might make it a little bit smaller because this book is considerably smaller than the one I made previous. So I may shorten the straps. But for now, I'm going to cut him at 12 inches. And then I determined that I needed to be 3 inches wide. Okay, so that page is done. Let's go over the handles. So on page 3, I've got the measures written on here, which would be 3 inch by 12 inches. So I've cut my 2 pieces, and I've gone ahead and, as per the bottom of page 6, step 1, I've drawn a line going along the length of the handle, right in the middle, and then I went and put double-sided tape because this fabric doesn't like to press as nicely as I'd like, and then when you do press it, it wants to spring back up. So by using double-sided tape, I can make it stay in place. Now you can press it, you can use clips as well, quilting clips. That'll hold most fabrics down if you're having an issue. I find double-sided tape a little easier, and the clips don't get in the way then. As you can see, even with the double-sided tape, it kind of wants to pop up. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a paper creaser for card making to help make those edges lay flatter. There's other kinds of waterproof canvas that this will lay even flatter, but this does pretty good. Now it doesn't want to pop on me. All right, and then you go ahead and press that with the iron, or in my case, I'm going to go ahead and put another line of double-sided tape away from the stitch line, which is 1/8 of an inch from the edge. I'm going to put it away from there because this double-sided tape isn't necessarily recommended for sewing, so I want to not stitch through it, or as little as possible anyway. And then you go ahead and you fold it again. That's step 2B. Step 2 was to fold to the middle, 2A was to fold to the middle, and 2B is to fold all the edges. Raw edges are now sealed. And then we would go to the sewing machine and stitch that up. So let's just go over the next one. So where I am using the double-sided tape to fold over, you can simply use the iron. So folding to the middle. Yeah, there's a second line of a second line there because I oopsed when I was holding the ruler. That one's having a little bit of issues wanting to stay down, so make it easier. And another line. It's not that this one won't press, it just doesn't press as nicely as I'd like to, and using double-sided tape I find is quicker, and it means I don't have to have clips at the sewing machine to be taking them off all the time. Alright, so those straps are ready to be sewn. Alright, let's go to the bottom of page 8 where it shows to do the top stitching on the straps. And I'm going to set it to 3.5 length. And I'm using a bonded polyester thread for the top stitching, a little thicker than normal thread. And I'm doing 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And I'm using my hands as guides, my fingers, so that my strap can't go either way, right to left. And rather than lifting my foot or it out of the foot of the machine, I just let it go stitch down. And I'm going to go to the edge. And if it's off a little bit, which it's not, it's bang on, I could, you know, angle it a little bit. Because that first 1/4 of an inch doesn't actually matter. It's going to be cut out of the pattern. So. And the next one. See there, he's off a little bit. I can choose to go ahead and raise my needle and bump him over, or because the first 1/4 of an inch isn't even going to be part, actually the first 1/2 an inch, you're never going to see it, I could just angle it and keep going and get it into the right position. So it's whatever you're most comfortable with doing. All right. And there's the straps. And I had a denim needle. Those are ready to go. Let's go over how to do a two-tone strap. Now the reasons for using a two-tone strap might be you want the look, maybe you want a solid on one side and a print on the other, or in my case it was because of thicknesses, because a 4-fold of this vinyl would have been just too thick in here. It wouldn't have looked very nice, and getting the stitching would have been problematic over this larger hump. So we've got the two tones, vinyl on the outside, and on the interior I went and put a waterproof canvas. So let's go over how to do that based on the charts that we already have. So the width, the lengthwise rather, we're going to do the same as before. We're going to pick our 12 inches for the length, but then for the width we're going to put that chart aside and we're going to go by the security strap width for one of them, for the exterior piece. So for the vinyl, we're going to look at the security strap measurements, and I wanted a 3/4 inch wide strap, so I'm going to be cutting it. Sorry, let's look at the finished width one. We're going to be looking at the 3/4 inch wide. I'm going to be cutting it at 1.5. We just need to double the width. So if you wanted a 1 inch handle, you're going to be cutting it 2 inches wide, and that's for the exterior. Now for the interior strap, or the lining part of it, you're going to cut the width but a 1/4 inch narrower. So instead of cutting it at 1.5, I'm going to be doing it at 1.25. If I wanted a 1 inch finished, I wouldn't be cutting it at 2 inches. I would be cutting it at 1 3/4 of an inch instead. So let's just write a couple of these in. So for 3/4, I'd be cutting it at 1/4, 1.25, and for a 2 inch, I'd be cutting it 1 3/4 of an inch, and so on and so forth. So a bit 2 1/4 for this one, and 1 inch here, so I'd be cutting it 3/4 of an inch. So whatever it is, you're doing it at a 1/4 inch narrower than the exterior piece. So there's my right side piece, if you will, and there's my lining piece. And then we'll be going over the construction here. So to assemble these, it's a little bit different, but we start with the same steps. So I've drawn my line down the middle, and then I put my double-sided tape, which with vinyl, I would definitely recommend having double-sided tape. It just makes it so much easier. And this other waterproof canvas that I'm using is far more stubborn than the other one for folding, so I'll be using double-sided tape as well. So you take just like the security strap, we're only going to go to the middle. And press it in quite well because it wants to, it does tend to want to spring up with the vinyl. Now the other reason you may want to put a backing on a vinyl strap for, even though if it's not that thick, maybe you had to cut it crosswise, and that's where all the stretch is, and your handles are going to stretch out if you've had to cut them crosswise, like I did here. I kind of did that on purpose to remember to tell you guys about this. So by putting a piece that has no stretch on the back side, you're going to prevent it from stretching out. Alright, so once you've folded all your vinyl together, then I go ahead and put my other piece of double-sided tape in the middle. And this is not stuff that's going to be sewn down the middle, so I can go ahead and use whatever type of double-sided tape I want. Okay, so just leave that aside for a minute. Then we're going to take the lining piece, and you would either be pressing that at the iron or doing what I'm doing here with a double-sided tape. Now this stuff, like I said, is really, really stubborn. So I get it going, and then I have my folder piece in hand, and I really just go at it like that. Now sometimes it may seem to some people that the waterproof canvas isn't worth the hassle. I like it for durability. You don't have to interface it. So overall, I think it saves time, and it's far better quality than if you were using a quilting cotton or something like that. So, and it's washable. So especially on the back side of a strap, it's wonderful for this. It just keeps everything nice and just much nicer. Now here I accidentally trimmed into it, but I want to leave it there as a reminder that I shouldn't go past that area. And it feels like I didn't get the double-sided tape in as well as I should have in a certain area. So I'm going to go ahead and put myself another piece. And I just didn't get the double-sided tape on center very well. I was going too fast. So, just going to fix that issue. Now he's going to fold easily to the middle and stay put. Said this one does not like to fold very nicely until you give it a good crease. Now with the other one, just go ahead, peel that off. And then you lay it on top, centering it in the middle. And that will keep the layers down instead of 4 layers of vinyl. It's just 2 layers of vinyl, 2 layers of waterproof canvas, and it will prevent the strap from stretching out. So we'll get to the sewing in just a bit. Okay, let's go over how to do the top stitching on the straps. So as I said before, your top stitching always looks better from the right side, but what I'm going to do here, I want to figure out how far from the edge do I need to stitch. So I'm just going to reset my to center, 3.5 length, and I want it to catch that edge. So I need to see where this is lining up, and I don't have a definite spot where it's showing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it to the 1/4 inch mark, so I have something to go by, and then I'm going to go ahead, for me this is what's going to work on my machine, then I'm going to go ahead and move my needle over, and I want to make sure it catches, so I'm going to go a hint back, but that's what I'm going to use. So from the right side now, I'm going to go ahead and line it up to the 1/4 inch mark, and that's where I'm going to line it up from. And you can stitch across, it just saves time lifting it up and everything and wasting thread. And is he lined up? Yep, good enough. There you go. Now I've got the needle down position just to make sure that it's now your stitching ends up a little further in than 1/8 of an inch, and it's fine as long as you're consistent. So you just got to know what you've done for each strap and go ahead and do it. And voila! There is the finished strap from the outside, which I think looks fantastic, and from the other side, which has caught both edges of the tape, and so that's what it would look like, and you'd have that pretty teal poking out. So there's the strap. So that's how you get a two-tone strap. Okay, let's work on the security strap. To determine the security strap cut length and width, you've got some quick reference charts for you below. The formulas are here for sizes not get listed. For the length, you're going to pick your book thickness like I did here, then pick the strap length you need to cut. Millimeters have been rounded to the nearest 5 millimeters at the end of the formula. Okay, so I've got my 3/4 inch, and let's go through the formula then. So we've got security strap cut length equals the book thickness, so I put in my 3/4 of an inch, plus the 2.5, and you need to do that part of the formula first, then times 2. So 3/4 plus 2.5 is 3.25, times 2 is 6.5. And so I'll be cutting my security strap at 6.5 inches. Now, you're going to pick the finished width you'd like, and then find the cut width you will need. So I wanted mine at 3/4 of an inch, so I'd find the 3/4 of an inch on the chart, and it's the strap finished width times 2, and there's the answer here. 3/4 times 2 is 1.5. Now for sizes that aren't listed, as mentioned for the handles, you can, let's say if I wanted 7/8 of an inch for my book thickness, I could just go ahead and just pick the 1 inch, or you could go ahead and do the formula. For the strap width, if I wanted 7/8 of an inch, which is an odd measure, but maybe that's what you want, maybe for a pattern or something, it works best to have it at 7/8 of an inch. So you could go ahead and just do the formula, or you could go ahead and just pick the next size up. Alright, so let's go over security strap folding, which is a little bit different than the handles. So if we look at page 8, we start off the same way we did with the handles, drawing a line down the middle, and I've gone ahead and put my double-sided tape on top of that line. The first step is the same. I guess it'd be step 2 in this case. First, step 1 and step 2 are the same. Draw the line and fold to the middle. And again, if you weren't using double-sided tape, you could go ahead and press it. And most fabrics do press nicely, and it's not an issue. It's just this fabric doesn't care to press as nicely as I'd like. Alright, so step 3, you're actually going to fold it in half lengthwise, like this. And then you would take it to the machine and stitch it. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and just pop a piece down the middle. Sometimes if your double-sided tape doesn't want to stick, just rub it in a little bit more. And then it'll come off easier. And then I go to the end, and then I do like to take a seam ripper or something flat that I can go in here like this and give it a tug and make everything lay flat nicely. Now with the iron you would just go across, but with the double-sided tape you kind of need something in there to push it. And that is now nicely flat and ready to go to the machine to stitch. Okay, let's do the security strap. So we're going to start at one edge at 1/8 of an inch, just as before. Now this one we want to stitch across the folded edge, and keeping it at 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Move your needle if you have to, or your strap a little bit if you need to make sure you're at 1/8 of an inch from the edge. There you go. And all the way around the 3 sides. So I started at the side that had the raw edge, went around the long side across the narrow folded edge, and then finishing on the other side. So there's our security strap. Alright, let's move on to hemming the sleeves. So using any kind of marking tool that won't show through on the right side of your material, draw a line 1 inch away from the edge, which is what I did here. It's this one here on this side of the tape. And then because I'm using waterproof canvas, I went ahead and put a piece of double-sided tape there to make it easier for me. And drawing that 1 inch line, this is a guideline where you're going to fold the raw edge of your fabric to meet that line. That's picture number 2. So I'm going to fold it to the line, and you would press it or use the double-sided tape, or if you're using the waterproof canvas that this works well with, you go ahead and do the edge and it helps it to lay flat. So I'm going to go ahead and get the other one done. I could go ahead and get both hems done, just completely finished, but I'm just going to do one step at a time on each. All right, fold hem to the line. And now you would either do the next step with the iron or the double-sided tape. Go ahead and put it on both. Alright, so peel that off. And now, you're going to use the iron, or because I've got the double-sided tape, I'm going to fold right at that line that was previously created. And there's my second fold. And we're going to go on to the stitching here in a moment. And because this fabric's a little thicker, like it just naturally folds right there, so it's actually pretty easy to do. There we go. So we're going to go stitch these, and in the pattern I said that you could stitch 1/8 of an inch away from this fold, or you can put 2 lines of stitching as I put here. Actually, that's from the back side, so we put 1 line here and 1 line here, and that's what I'm going to do because I love lots of top stitching on the camel type fabric. So alright, so let's do our top stitching on the sleeves. Now the first line is easy enough. You just do 1/8 of an inch from the edge. I've got the machine again set to a 3.5. So I'm going to grab the other one and do the same stitch at the same time. And if you only wanted the 1 line of stitching, this is the one that you would be doing. The next one is the one you'd be doing. So this one, because I want the 2 lines, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then to figure out where my next line is, what I'm going to do is flip from this side, and I'm going to line up my needle where I want it, and see where this edge lines up. He's actually right on the edge of my foot. So I know then that from this side, I can just line it up with the edge of my foot and go ahead and stitch, and it's going to catch that hem. Do the other one. Oops. And there we go. That's the 2 sleeves ready to go. So all the sewing prep work has been done. Okay, let's start to build up our main panel. So we're going to be working with the bottom of page 9 and page 10 as well. We're going to take our main panel, and as per the instructions, we're going to fold the sides together, right sides together. You take a pencil, or you can take your fingernail. If your fabric presses, it puts a bit of a divot, you can go like that. Mine doesn't. You can take a pencil, and you don't want to go past your seam allowance unless it's an air or heat erase pencil. So I've got a center line marked here, and I want to turn around and do the same thing on this side. I've already got the marks in place, so I'd go in and just rub in a mark there. And then from those marks, we grab a ruler and we put a mark that's 2 inches. There's the center here. I put a mark 2 inches over here and 2 inches over here. Same thing here. 2 inches and 2 inches. And that is going to be the location for our handles and for the security strap. And the other mark you can put in place is on the right side, which will actually be your front of the book. From the center mark, go 1.5 inches in and put a line, a little plus sign, and that's where your snap or your Velcro would be located. All right, now this is the end result that we want with the straps like this, but the easiest way to put them in is actually to put one strap end at a time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center a strap on that mark and clip it in place. And on the opposite side over here, I'm going to do the same thing on the mark. Actually, I positioned that one wrong. I got to reposition it. You want it to be sticking out about 1/4 of an inch. And that's just going to add some stability in that area. So I'm just going to let it stick out about 1/4 inch. Make sure it's centered. So as you can see in the drawing, they actually stick out a little bit. And then hold that in place. And then take your security tab. The security tab doesn't need to stick out. I do have it showing sticking out in there, but it doesn't need to. And again, center it. I can't seem to center anything. Center it, and then put your clip. There. And then we're going to take this to the sewing machine. And those are just so when I get to the sewing machine, it's easier for me to see what's going on and for you guys to have seen it as well. So let's head to the sewing machine. Alright, so here we are at the sewing machine. I'm going to take my clip off. I'm just going to verify that I'm centered on the strap. And you use pins if you need to, whatever you're comfortable with. And 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the cover, I'm going to baste, and I'm going to run the line a few times. And you can either just keep stitching, or you can lift your foot and move it over, whichever you're comfortable with. And just baste the next part. And then you take your other end of your strap, not this one over here that's from the other side. This one's pinned over here, don't take that one, get him out of the way. Take the strap you've just sewn, keeping it flat, rotate it around, and put it in the center mark, and have them stick out just 1/4 of an inch. And baste him at 1/8, run the stitches over a few times. Pull that out. And then go to this side. And again, you can hold these all in place at the machine. You don't have to clip it down on the table, but it's easier for you guys to see what was going on, me doing it at the table. Stitch there, and here I'm just going to raise it. Move to my next section down here, pivot my strap around, center him, stick it out about 1/4 of an inch. Go over a few times. Now they're well secured. Okay, and let's have a peek at that. Alright, so this is what we have so far. Here's the exterior of our cover. I've gone ahead and put my snap in on the strap, which would do this. This is the front of the cover, and this folds over like this. And your handles do that. So we're getting there. I'm going to put that aside. And we're going to work on the bottom of page 10, which is building our lining. And it's not very complicated. We've only got 3 pieces to deal with. So either you're going to pin or clip, or use double-sided tape to put your sleeves onto the lining. And that's all that we have to do. So all we do for the double-sided tape, just go ahead and put it on the 3 sides of your sleeve. And I've got a really narrow double-sided tape right here. It's a 3mm or 1/8 of an inch. And so it would never be in the seam allowance, whether top stitched or the original seam allowance. It doesn't matter, it's not going to be in there. So it doesn't matter if what kind of tape that I use. It can be the stuff that would gum up the needle, because I'm not going to be stitching through it. I mean, you don't really have to do the curve. You can just snip it there, restart. Snip and restart. Because you don't clip your, it's not like you use pins or clips at every point, so. And then go ahead and put this securely onto the sides. And I did put all the different center marks, all like on the sides and on the top and bottom of the lining piece, because it'll just make you, that's your matching points. It'll help you to make sure that you've got things matched up when you put the two covers together, the exterior and the lining. Alright, so here's my side piece. There we go, my edges. The double-sided tape buckled a little bit. Just going to fix it, put it back in place. So we don't want anything buckling on the cover. There we go. So that would be in what's mentioned on page 9, or 9 on place 10, sorry. Page 10, where it says to baste the sleeves in position. That's what I'm doing. I'm basting it down. I'm not going to have to go ahead and stitch all the way around because of the double-sided tape. But if you weren't using it, then you would just go ahead and go all the way around here at 1/8 of an inch, basting it in place. So that's prepped, ready to go. We're going to do some prep work that was on page 9, which was folding the edges and making it easier for the turn hole. And I'm going to show you what I did here on the back side of the main panel. So I folded it together, wrong sides together as a book, and I did that center point like we did before, okay, finding the center. And then I have my line, and I measured out 2.5 inches. You'd want a little bit bigger if you've got a stiffer cover. I measured 2.5 inches out each way and put a line 1/2 inch up at that width. So it's a total of 5 inches. I put a 1/2 inch line. And then I put a piece of double-sided tape, or you would go ahead and just press this to meet the line with the iron, so that this is all pre-pressed. And then it's going to open back up, but that's okay. It's because of the pre-pressing that you've done, it's going to make it a whole lot easier to seal your turn hole. So in my case, I'm just going to put my double-sided tape there and leave it. And I did the exact same thing on the lining side. Alright, with this type of waterproof canvas, it actually does crease really well with a crease tool. So if I go like this, meeting the line, but I'm still going to use the double-sided tape because it'll give me a line, but it's still going to want to spring up. So it's best if I use the double-sided tape after to keep it together. So that gives me a fairly good crease now. So when we go to seal this up, it'll be so much easier. Alright, let's work on the final assembly, which is on page 12. And you're going to place your main panel lining right sides down onto the main panel exterior, matching your corners and matching the turn hole section as well. So you want to make sure those two go together because it's all prepped, so you might as well match them. Now, then you would pin it or clip it in place. I need to do my double-sided tape, and it's going to be easier to put it on my lining, so I'm going to start with that. So you'd be pinning all the way around. Again, this, you won't be stitching through this, so if you use a narrow double-sided tape, you won't be gumming up your needle. You don't care what type of double-sided tape you use. I think going around the edges makes it easier to take the tape off because you can take it off in one fell swoop, but it is a bit of a pain to go around curves. All right. You want to make sure that you press your double-sided tape down into the fabric, otherwise when you do this it wants to lift up, and that one kind of lifted a little bit because I didn't push it down. So you push it down nice and firm, then you go ahead and lift it off. Alright, so now take your panel and whoops, making sure you got there's the opening and there's the opening here. So I'm going to match 2 corners. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab my centers, peeking and getting my centers matched up. Oops. Getting that corner matched up again. And then you kind of go in between the two. Give it a bit of a pull and it actually just lays flat. Same thing for here. You want to make sure the edges all line up. You can reposition usually, especially if it's on vinyl. Okay, so that's all good to go. Take these corners, line them up, and you can just take the middle, give that a good pull, and it lines up nicely. You go do the other side. Give it a good pull, making sure all the edges line up. And then this one, because it's such a long one, I can kind of see my my crease from the side up where I did the crease before it pinched it, but there, that makes it easier. Put the mark again. And then from the center, just make sure that corner's lined up properly. Give it a pull. Edges all line up. Give that a bit of a pull. And there we go. It is ready to be sewn. I'll be starting from here, going 1/4 inch all the way around. Get that thread out of the way. Back stitching at beginning and at end. So I'll be going all the way around and to seal this up. Here we are. I'm going to stitch this around. I'm going to reset my stitch length to a standard stitch length. And line this up for the 1/4 inch. I can see my line, so I'm going to back stitch to my line for my opening. And you can shorten your stitch length for the curve. It actually makes it easier to go around. And just take your time. And you just spin your fabric until you get lined up again, and then change it to the standard stitch length. And I just want to make sure that my strap is actually straight, because I'm looking inside and I don't feel that it's straight, so I'm just going to go ahead inside like that, straighten it out, and keep stitching. And when I'm here, I'm going to back stitch and then resume sewing. And then when I get to the next strap, I just want to make sure again that he is straight. There. And then back stitch and keep going. And I'm going to shorten my stitch length again to like 1.5. And then just take my time spinning the fabric, going around the curve, reset the stitch length, and now I just have the full length to do. Shorten my stitch length on the next curve. You can see it's pulling a bit, and I'm going to rectify that. I'm going to put a stitch down or needle down position, And I'm going to reach in and I'm going to give him a little push so he is right at the edge where he's supposed to be. And I'm going to make sure that my strap is straight. Then go up to it, check my stitches, or double my stitches. Now you see it pulled away here where I didn't get it lined up to begin with, so I'm just going to reposition. There we go. And there's the security strap. I'll double stitch that, and this strap can be straightened just a touch. So again, I'm going to reach in, straighten him. Oh, that's weird. Go over the strap a couple times, and then shorten my stitch length as I get to the curve. Spin it around. Reset my stitch length to regular. Alright, and I keep going until my ending spot, back stitch. And we're done sewing this all the way around. So let's just go to the table and do some trimming. Alright, let's do some trimming. So as mentioned on step 3 of page 12, we're going to trim around the curves down to 1/8 of an inch. You don't really need to trim the rest of this line. It's mostly the curves. This is critical for nice, smooth curves. But you want to leave the seam allowance intact where the straps are. That's for strength. You want to leave the seam allowance intact for the turn hole. So trim it down to 1/8 of an inch. And this is essential for the smooth curves. And there we go. And you can leave the rest as is. And now we're going to go ahead and turn it right side out. Find my opening. Oh, I put double-sided tape in my opening too, which doesn't really matter because I can pull it right out. But some double-sided tape is problematic, so it wouldn't be so good. Now, I'm going to turn it right side out, and then I'll peel this off and fold that up the way it needs to go. Okay, so let's turn it right side out. Just reach in. You give it a tug on your handles, you can get the ends to pop out easier. And then just reach in to your curves with your fingers. Poke them out. I'll show you a little tool after that. So it'll be actually really helpful with that. Find the corners. Fine if you put your finger into the curve like this, or the point, whichever one, and then you push this side outwards, you're going to get it out much nicer. So you reach, go find the curve, stick your finger in it to the inside, right here, then push with your thumb outwards. One last one, finger in place, push outwards. Redo that first one because I didn't do it that way and he's not out as nice as it should be. So pushing outwards or to the inside, then push, your thumb pushes against that other finger and pushes outwards. Let's see a thread hanging out. Alright, now I'm going to seal that turn hole. So if you had used fabric that could be press that would actually keep the press. You can go ahead and just redo the press to make sure it's all nice and flat and straight. And in my case, I'm going to go ahead and take the double-sided tape off and do one side at a time. Just fold it up. You can use this with fabric that presses easily too, just because it keeps it in place. But you're definitely going to be stitching through this area, so make sure it's a double-sided tape that could be for standard sewing machines. All right, so that's all nicely laying flat, and I can use, if I only have tape that you shouldn't sew through, I can go ahead and just put a piece of double-sided tape where I'm not going to stitch through it, just to hold all the layers together. So I've put it in away from where my stitch line is going to be, which is 1/8 of an inch from the tape. And I'm going to show you exactly what 1/8 of an inch is, because this final top stitching is probably the #1 crucial thing about the whole sewing part, because if you go in too wide, you're not going to have any space for your book. So let's just get this lined up. And I'll go over that at the sewing machine. But right now, I need to go press this flat. And just so you teach you a little trick. To be able to get something right on the edge, this is a little trick. Roll the fabric towards you, the top fabric, then push outwards. And then you can get the seam right on the edge, and then you press that, and you're going to get it exactly where you want it to go. All right, so off to press. All right, so I've got my cover all pressed flat, and we're going to do the top stitching, which is the final step. And I'm going to start on the back side, which is where the security strap is, with the top side up, and I'm going to lengthen my stitch length to 3.5. And especially on startup with a bonded polyester or bonded nylon, you want to hold your threads, because you have the risk of it turning into a rat's nest on the bottom. So you hold your threads, and that's right. I was going to show you guys what is 1/8 of an inch with your needle plate. So I'm going to take the foot off and show you the needle plate. All right. So each one of these lines is 1/8 of an inch. The first line that actually has letters, or numbers rather, on my needle plate says 3/8 of an inch. So the one before it is 2/8 of an inch, or 1/4 of an inch. The 1/8 inch line isn't actually there. If you plant your needle, the 1/8 is like about here, which typically on any given foot, let's just grab an all-purpose foot here. If I put a standard foot in my machine, which I can top stitch with that on here, it doesn't matter. I just kind of get used to using the walking foot. There's my center right here, and there's the needle if I put it in there. If I line up the edge of the fabric with the inside edge of the foot, maybe a hair before, or actually right here at the front of the foot, if I line it up here, that is 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to show you on a ruler. All right, so here's the individual inches, or 1 inch, 2 inches. Each one of these lines on this ruler is 1/8 of an inch. So I only want to be 1/8 of an inch from the edge of my fabric. That's the 1/8 of an inch, and that's the important part, sorry, with this top stitching. So I'm going to go ahead, oops, needle up, and lengthen my stitches. I need to grab my thread so I don't end up with a rat's nest. And I'm going to line it up with the inside edge of that foot. Grab my threads just for the first stitch or two. And going around the curve, you just take your time. Needle down makes it easier. And this very corner right here is where I'm lining up with. So it's like this edge is way over here, but by the time it gets to the needle, I'm going to have it at the 1/8 of an inch. And then as I get to the straight stretch, and I don't know if this is where my opening is. No, it's not. It's on the other side. Okay, now it caught, the sleeve was catching on the flatbed that I have on the machine. So that's the spot you want to make sure, keep your sleeve up in the air as you come around so it doesn't get caught. And if you just go real slow going around the curve, you can actually go around. If you got to do it a stitch at a time, do it a stitch at a time. Just take your time. Okay, now right here, that's where the sleeve is, and it's a little thicker. If your machine has a problem going over thick areas, use what's called the Gina-majig or a hump jumper. You can see there's a bulk. I don't know if you guys probably can't see that too well. There's a bulk here, and what happens when you end up trying to go over a bulk is your foot goes at an angle and you risk your needle hitting the foot. So as I get closer to that hump, he's just about to go over the hump. I'm going to lift my foot, slide this behind. You can use a piece of cardboard, anything, to keep the foot level, and it just glides right over. And coming back the other way, you use the slit that's in here, and you keep sewing until it rides off the thicker part. And when it's off the thicker part, you take it out and just keep sewing. And I'm getting to that thick part again, so slide it in behind to level the foot till you get onto the flat part. Then coming back the other direction this way till you're off the thick part, and then keep sewing. For some reason the other ones weren't that hard to get around, but that one seemed to be a little thicker, which you can also hammer your seams down. That's where the sleeve was. Alright, and I'm almost at the beginning. And I just want to grab my, oh, sorry about that, guys. I just want to grab my scissors. That's what happens when the camera's right in your face. Okay, so I'm going to come right around. And if this was on a vinyl, this is where you'd need to be very careful. You want to be in the needle up position, and wherever your stitch lands, you want to land in the previous stitching that you've done, and then your stitches don't really show, and you kind of get going and it's fine then. And all done. So let's just have a look at our cover. Alright, so here's the finished cover, and I've started to slide the book into the cover. I've got this one in here, and then to get the next one in, you peel the cover back a little bit. You don't want to peel it too much. You'll cover the book. This is really hard to do, trying to keep it so you guys can see what's going on. Usually I do this in my lap. And you tuck it into the other side of the cover. You get it started. If you need to, pull back the cover a little bit. There we go. And then it sits in there beautifully. And ta-da! There's the cover. I gotta say, I really like it. It looks really cute. I've got a child that's really gonna like that. And I hope you guys have liked this tutorial. And enjoy the free pattern. And I hope that if you like this video, please hit the like button below and subscribe to my channel, and look forward to future videos.